Well, hi everybody, and welcome to week 5 of the semester. I enjoyed talking with everybody last week and getting a chance to see your faces and chat about the Sherlock film and also the story, A Study in Scarlet, and really enjoyed the lively discussion, all the questions and comments that y'all had. So last week I know was a little bit different because it took me a while to get everything up for you because I was scheduling meetings and meeting with all of my other classes. And it was a short week as well. So you may have gotten started late on the mysterious affair at Styles, based on the responses I've seen so far in the class. It looks like you may be lagging a bit behind, and that's okay. What I do want to remind you of, though, is that next week you actually have your first test. So by the end of this week, you do want to make sure that you have completed the novel, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, and also have watched the film Gosford Park, that is the companion film to this novel. Now, I've put up a discussion board post for you, and I've also put up some study questions for Gosford Park. Remember, you have some from last week for the novel Mysterious Affair at Styles. So you have those materials. I also put up an excerpt from a book that is an introduction to crime fiction, and that's what I used last week to give you some notes on Agatha Christie and on Golden Age crime fiction. So I put that excerpt into your week 5 module, so that's in there. What I will do at the end of this week, I guess, is I'm going to poll you guys to see what you want to do next week. We are scheduled to meet face to face and to review for your first test, and we can do that. We can meet. I can meet with some of you on Monday and some of you on Wednesday. However, what I want to know from you is whether you would prefer to just meet on Teams again. Is that easier for you? So I'm just going to do an informal poll in the discussion board just to get your responses to that. How many of you would prefer to just meet remotely? If only one or two of you want to come to campus, we may go ahead and just meet remotely. So they'll look for more on that later this week. So I just wanted to review the novel. If you have read the novel, then I hope you enjoyed the twisty ending. Just a reminder, this is Agatha Christie's first novel. She introduces Hercule Poirot and also what will become her signature, which is this twisty puzzle plot with a surprise ending. And, you might think you've got it figured out. She takes you down lots of false trails, and she tends to introduce romantic complications. And you saw that with John Cavendish and his wife, and Lawrence Cavendish and Cynthia. And so you saw those romantic entanglements, and she tended to use those to lead you down some false trails and introduce some false clues. And it's quite a twisty plot at the end. And then you have, of course, another signature of Agatha Christie's, especially in her Hercule Poirot novels, is that you have the gathering at the end where Poirot tells everybody how he's figured it out, and he reveals, who the surprise villain is, or perpetrator, and that person is brought to justice. He outsmarts the police. Inspector Japp always looks kind of stupid, but he will inevitably try to take the credit for for figuring out the whodunit here. And then you often have, after the big reveal, you often have this kind of conversation between Poirot and Hastings where Poirot explains everything in much more detail. And Hastings asks, well, what about this? And what about that? And what did you think? How did you figure this out? And how did you figure that out? And then Poirot takes him into his confidence. And that, for the reader, allows us to sort of think back over all the different clues and all the different details that we just kind of ignored, didn't think a lot of, right? And so that becomes kind of one of her signature techniques. Just a little background, I gave you lots of links to read on this novel, but remember that she published this in 1920, and And publishing lore has it that she wrote it on kind of a dare for sort of a bet. She bet a friend and her husband that she could write a detective novel or detective story in which she could keep the reader guessing and trick the reader all the way through until the end. And she did successfully, and she got lots of good reviews, even though there were a few reviewers who said maybe there were a few too many false clues, maybe it's a few too many twisty, kind of twists and turns. But that does become her signature, that puzzle plot. So I hope you finish that up and enjoy it. Use the study questions for that. So sometime this week, before the test, the test next week, you need to watch the movie Gosford Park. Gosford Park was actually, came out in 2001, and then it was widely released in 2002. The story, which is a classic country house murder mystery, like, a typical Golden Age murder mystery, was written starting in 1999, interestingly, by Julian Fellows, who also wrote Downton Abbey. He wrote and produced Downton Abbey. So, this kind of fiction is something Julian Fellows is kind of known for, and also the period of time in which it's set, which is the time period in which Golden Age crime fiction was written. So roughly between the wars, while Downton Abbey starts before World War I and goes on, after World War I and ends, somewhere before World War II. Gosford Park is set between the wars in the early 30s, around 32. Because it was written in 1999 and done in 2001 or 2002, you really want to look for this sort of modern sensibilities. What is Robert Altman, the director of this movie? They called it a dark comedy. So what do they change? What's different in this film that you don't normally necessarily see in a country house murder, or that you don't see in Agatha Christie? Go back over those notes that I gave you about Golden Age mysteries and the country house murder. Look at the typical elements and see what you don't see in Gosford Park. It's an upstairs, downstairs kind of mystery. So you're going to see the aristocrats upstairs and how they interact with one another, and those characters and the twists and turns and the secrets that they're keeping. And then you're going to see the downstairs, the servants who keep this massive house running, and kind of their secrets and their interactions, their loves and hates and so on. But there's some real differences here. Besides sex, which there is, which there never is in Agatha Christie, but there is in Gosford Park. There's a good bit of it too, so brace yourself. But watch for what you see them changing. What is different? And what do you think about that? And I ask you that in your discussion board post this week. But watch for the traditional elements of the country house mystery, how it's worked out, and then look for the differences. In what ways do they depart from the traditional country house mystery, and what do you think about that? And sort of how do you respond to the film? I think you'll enjoy it. So finish the novel, do the work for that. Notice the excerpt that you have to read in the module for this week and the study questions for Gosford Park. And see if you can get all of this done by Sunday, at least the reading and watching the film. I'm not that worried about the discussion board post, but I do want you to be done before next week so that we can review on Monday and Wednesday and get you ready to take your first test. And as always, get in touch if you need me.